when I tell you that cordyceps or reishi or the lion's mane have these properties, they have them as an add-on, but their main priority is to help your immune system. And um, because of this cloak of protection that they've created against viruses, against infections, against any kind of external threat to themselves, they have built some unique molecules that are not available anywhere else in the world except in these mushrooms.
Okay, so I'm here with Romina. I am so happy to be chatting to you today. It's been a long time coming. It's been a couple of weeks since our pre-chat. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara. I'm so excited to be talking all things mushrooms.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. So, what everyone needs to know is that me and you, we had our pre-chat a couple of weeks ago, and even just the 30 minutes that we had, my mind was like it was absolutely blown with just even the small little things you were coming out with. You're like, did you know this about mushrooms? Did you know that about mushrooms? And I was like, no, I need to, I need to know more. So then we wanted to chat last week, but then obviously it didn't happen because other
Yes.
things came up. Your schedule is crazy. I know, like you've just got so much going on. But it that really just made me even more eager for this conversation. I'm just like, I just can't wait to chat to Romina today. So.
No, I think for me, I was just telling you before, it doesn't feel like it's any work to chat about mushrooms because it's something I think about every single day.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing kingdom and so amazing to discover that I just can't wait to share with you.
Because you're a nutritionist, right? So you have a whole load of expertise, but mushrooms is your thing. Like that's your passion. So like how did that come about? How did mushrooms become the main thing for you?
I think like for me, I was always interested in health and chronic disease and solving and curing, long-term chronic problems people were coming by. But I came across them by mistake at a conference, and I came across this book called 12 Medicinal Mushrooms. And I was quite intrigued because it was a very tiny book. And I was like, oh, I know about mushrooms. We eat mushrooms every day, like, shiitake and portobello mushrooms and button mushrooms. It's the usual. But this was basically telling me that these mushrooms were just not normal mushrooms, but they had medicinal properties. And as a nutritionist, just like you, I was interested in understanding, okay, there must be some nutrients in these mushrooms that people have discovered. And I realized after reading a little bit about the book and talking to different people who are already in this kind of world of mushrooms that there was so much more, and that mushrooms are a complete different kingdom to herbs and plants and nutrients, and they were actually a different species altogether of nutrients that exist in nature. So that is how I discovered all about these medicinal mushrooms.
And how long ago was this? Because I feel like only recently has mushrooms really exploded onto the scene to the public. So um, I mean, you only have to look at Netflix now, and they have several documentaries on all types of mushrooms. I mean, mainly psychedelics, but I feel like mushrooms are much more in the forefront these days. So, I mean, back then, how long ago was it when you discovered them?
Oh,
Because was it just a small thing back then, or?
it was a very tiny thing. No one had ever heard about the medicinal mushrooms in the UK. I'm talking about over 12 years ago. So I'm
Wow.
I'm saying people didn't know much about mushrooms. They looked at me as if I was a bit crazy. And people knew about magic mushrooms, and they kept telling me, which now is a trend, like you said.
Yes.
People kept saying, "You mean magic mushrooms?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "You mean portobello mushrooms?" I'm like, "No, this is a different kind of mushroom,
Yeah.
completely separate to these two famous mushrooms that we were looking at." Yeah.
And so basically, you mentioned that these therapeutic mushrooms, is that what you'd refer to them as? Yeah. Okay. So you say they're separate from, let's say, cooking mushrooms like portobello, shiitake, bella mushrooms, and the sorts that you cook with. And you say that they're a kingdom and they are just a whole thing in themselves. So, can you explain to everyone what you mean by that, this kingdom? Just dive in.
So when I say kingdom, I mean we talk about, nature and the plant kingdom. We talk about herbs, we talk about vegetables and fruits, and we talk about all the nutrients in these foods. But the mushrooms in themselves are a different kingdom, and within that species, you have your normal day-to-day mushrooms that we eat. You have your psilocybins that you talked about recently, and then you have your medicinal mushrooms. And when you're looking at using mushrooms therapeutically to heal a problem, we call that mycotherapy, meaning using mushrooms as a therapy to cure chronic problems.
And myco refers to, is that mushroom? Is that
Yes, in
okay?
Greek.
Yeah.
Myco refers to mushrooms in Greek, and obviously therapy is, therapy using mushrooms. So it's very fascinating because these are different. It's a different kingdom, as I said, but within that you have different species of mushrooms. It's like comparing oranges to lemons. They're two different types of fruits. In the same way, when you're looking at the mushrooms, you can't compare a portobello mushroom to the medicinal kind of mushrooms that have all these medicinal properties. And to take you back to history, they are some of the oldest living beings on the planet. They came about just when things started sprouting. Mushrooms were the first thing sprouting in the world.
Are we talking like prehistoric?
Yes, we are.
Wow,
We're
like
talking about billions of years.
dinosaurs or pre
Yes,
pre?
yes, we are.
Okay,
We are.
okay.
We're talking about pre-dinosaurs, and within that time frame, these mushrooms have built a cloak of protection against all kinds of diseases, uh, planetary issues that we've witnessed, from earthquakes to prehistoric times. These mushrooms have survived every single challenge that has come about on the planet. So it makes them one of the most resilient beings in the planet that can actually remain alive in spite of any other challenges that might come our way.
And so you can only imagine, when you say how strong they are and how resilient they are, to then think about ingesting them and in your own body, just imagining what effect they could have, like such a resilient, strong organism. I mean, it's pretty magical, like the effect that they can have. I mean, you said something when we spoke before. You said our cells, like our immune cells, have receptors. Our brain has receptors for certain mushrooms. Like, so first of all, what therapeutic mushrooms, like name some common therapeutic mushrooms so that the audience knows what we're talking about here. And then like the receptors, like how the mushrooms are kind of linked to different cells and how we've evolved together. We're kind of symbiotic relationship. We need each other. Yeah.
Yes, so some of the popular mushrooms we're talking about today, which are very trendy, are the lion's mane mushroom, for example. And they call it lion's mane because it looks like a mane of a lion. So
Yeah.
a very beautiful looking mushroom, and actually edible as well. And that mushroom, lion's mane, is known for its nootropic or neuroregenerative properties, meaning they have the ability to increase brain power. So pretty amazing mushrooms.
And so would you say that the brain has receptors for it, or it can cross the blood-brain barrier? Like, is that what you mean?
Yes, so some of these molecules inside lion's mane are so tiny that they're able to cross the brain barrier, the blood-brain barrier, and they're actually able to communicate with the brain's receptor sites to repair nerves, for example. So this is just one amazing research among many, but that's what, for example, the lion's mane mushroom is able to do. So they are communicating with our brain receptor sites, but they're also reaching the brain very easily. And there are very few elements in the world that actually can cross the blood-brain barrier. So they're tiny enough to cross and to help the brain regenerate nerves and repair nerves or create new nerves. So it's just like in meditation, you know, we see all this research saying meditation helps you to rewire the brain. And in a similar way, lion's mane mushrooms able to create new nerves and new pathways in the brain. So there's a lot of new research that's come about that's pretty fascinating and promising.
My gosh, and who doesn't want that for themselves? Because there's been this, it's only recently been proven that our brain can change in terms of what it learns and the nerve connections. So it's called neuroplasticity. And it's only really recently been shown that actually, as you get older, your brain can change. It can make new nerve connections, and it can be flexible, and you can learn new things. And it's only really a recent thing. And to know that there's a mushroom called lion's mane that can get in there and help, I just love that. And, you know, for me, lion's mane is something that I take every day. And we'll be talking about doses later on.
Yes, we will.
But that's, I mean, lion's mane is one of my favorites because for me, cognition is everything. Because I find, you know, after having kids, you know, I'm 37, which is young, but you know, I feel like I get a bit more brain fog these days. And you know, my nan passed from Alzheimer's about 5 years ago, and so I'm all about the brain.
Mm.
And to know that, so that's why lion's mane is like a daily thing for me.
And it's really good that you're thinking of taking it yourself, because with Alzheimer's, we know that, you know, the genetic kind of predisposition comes from our, you know, from our family members. So for you to protect yourself using lion's mane
Mhm.
is key. And actually, I've had a few Alzheimer patients that have seen huge improvements using lion's mane at higher dosages. So
Really?
there's pretty fascinating research around using mushrooms, specifically lion's mane, to reverse Alzheimer's. And there have been a lot of new studies around that as well. But I have seen it firsthand with some clients.
That is insane. That, I mean, that's everything, because Alzheimer's is one of the most deadly diseases that doesn't have a cure. And I mean, not to say that people are cured, but just to see improvements is just huge.
It is. It is. I had an 8 years old woman using who had major issues. Obviously, nutritionally, we had to resolve a lot of issues with her food and her diet. But on top of that, I gave her high dosages of lion's mane, and I couldn't believe the difference. I had a call from her son saying, "Thank you for bringing my mother back." But that was 4 months later, so you had to be a bit patient
Yeah.
with it. But
Hmm.
to receive that call, I was like, these mushrooms are doing something. I have no doubt. Yeah, so lion's mane is a big one. And then another one that I'd like to talk about is reishi, which is called the mushroom of immortality or the mushroom of eternal youth.
Tell
And
me more.
yes, yes, for us women, anything to beat age, right? But interestingly, this mushroom was also used as a way to modulate or to manage stress levels. And Tibetan monks used to use reishi to balance and help them meditate and find that kind of Zen space for themselves. So, another very, very well studied mushroom, probably the most well studied mushroom, um, which, you know, people have been talking about for many centuries. So,
I mean, I see
um,
it everywhere. I see it sold in, you know, spas and supplement stores and on supermarket shelves. You know, just powders and all the different forms that the mushrooms come in. Which again, we'll talk about later, like the different
yes,
forms of,
yes.
you know, just in case I forget. But reishi is just so popular, and so it's the mushroom of immortality, and it
Yes.
helps reverse aging or stall aging.
Stall aging,
Okay.
but definitely there is it's a potent antioxidant, so it helps to stop, you know, oxidation, which is the cause of aging. So a very beautiful mushroom and used actually for many other reasons. used for immunity, used for a lot of different reasons, but it's well known for this particular kind of antioxidant property. And then you have the cordyceps mushroom, which a lot of men swear by because of its ability to keep you quite fertile. So very well known with people who are wanting an alternative to Viagra, or just really helping with libido. So it's known for that. But in China, they use cordyceps. They give cordyceps as gifts in weddings, and it's kind of weighed in gold over there. So you can imagine how precious cordyceps mushrooms are back in the East, and the importance of their ability to not just, as I said, help with fertility issues, but actually it actually helps with managing energy levels and just gives you this amazing boost of energy when you're using it.
Because cordyceps has a quite an unusual way of coming about. Can you explain how it comes
Yes.
about?
Unfortunately, it's you were talking about a symbiotic relationship. So mushrooms, there are three types of relationships in nature. There's a symbiotic relationship where two beings or elements help each other out. So it's a win-win situation. But then there's a relationship being parasitical, which is where one living being profits from the other. And this is unfortunately what cordyceps does. Cordyceps spores, or just like bees spread pollen, mushrooms spread their spores. And these spores can only kind of grow within another living host for cordyceps. And so they usually use a larva or a caterpillar or an insect to be able to feed off them and grow.
And can it be any insect, or is it a specific?
It's caterpillars. That's kind of the typical one. But there are these horrible YouTube videos you see about how this actually happens.
Look it up,
And
guys. Look it up.
yes, do look it up. But you see this image of a caterpillar going a bit crazy because the mushroom actually starts to control the brain of the caterpillar, and it actually sprouts out of the head of the caterpillar and becomes a mushroom. And at that point, obviously, the poor caterpillar is not alive anymore. So it's a parasitical relationship, but that's the way that cordyceps is grown. So you wouldn't call it. You could basically see that it's not a very nice way, but this also explains why it's so hard and difficult to come across good quality cordyceps.
And why it's so expensive as well, like you said, and why it's so honored in China. And because it's just, I can imagine it's not easy to come about. Like,
no, it's not. It's not. A lot of companies now are not using the actual cordyceps itself, but they're using the spores, or they're using kind of the root of that mushroom, and they're using that in labs. And so if you are ingesting it, 90% of the time you're going to have it in that form. So I wouldn't worry too much when people are taking cordyceps.
and in line with the times. So obviously we've just had a pandemic and everyone's concerned about immunity. So which mushrooms would you say target the immune cells? Like you said our immune cells have certain receptors and certain mushrooms help with your immunity. So speak to that for a moment.
So what's most interesting about all the mushrooms is their main activity is immune balancing, all of them. So when I tell you that cordyceps or reishi or the lion's mane have these properties, they have them as an add-on, but their main priority is to help your immune system. And because of this cloak of protection that they've created against viruses, against infections, against any kind of external threat to themselves, they have built some unique molecules that are not available anywhere else in the world except in these mushrooms. And these molecules are able to protect us human beings. Now you'll wonder why I'm saying it's able to protect us, and not, and why can't, let's say, vitamin C protect us in different ways, like taking a lemon juice, for example. But what's interesting about mushrooms is that they share 90% of their DNA with us humans, interestingly. So we are closer to a mushroom than to a banana, for example. So I'm just
A
kind of
funny
like,
thought.
genetic wise, we are closer to mushrooms. Our DNA is more similar to a mushroom than to a plant or a
And
fruit.
and
So
so would you say if for immune protection, I mean, everyone goes on about vitamin C supplementation, and would you say mushrooms are more effective in that case?
I'd say they have different impacts on the body, but if you wanted a quick reaction quickly to protect yourself, then mushroom will actually help you to kill that virus or kill the infection once and for all. So obviously a combination is great when you're taking the vitamin C with the mushrooms, but the mushrooms are potent in fighting off any kind of immune threatening problems that we're encountering nowadays.
Because I had COVID a few months ago, and it was pretty bad. But I have to say, I was advised by a friend who's very keen on mushrooms. I was advised to take agarikon in the form of tablets, and I took quite a high dose. So the back of the bottle said take 1 tablet a day, but I took 5 a day because I heard that they're safe, and it's very hard to overdose on mushrooms. So I thought, oh, so I'm just going to pop 5. So that I started taking them when my family started to come down with COVID. So the kids were really bad, my husband was really bad, and I thought, oh my God, I'm next. So I started taking agarikon every day in high doses, and I got the COVID, but it was not as bad as my family. So I was still functioning, whereas they were kind of taking days off in bed, and I was still functioning normally, but I just had a hideous cold, and it wasn't nice. But I put that down to the agarikon because that's the only thing I did uniquely to my family. So I can only put it down to that. Do you think it was the agarikon?
100%. I'm pretty sure it's the Agaricus blase, which is the original mushroom, also known as the sun mushroom, very very popular, and it's one of the mushrooms with the highest immune activity within it. So I'm not surprised you taking 5 of them actually created a cloak of protection for you.
So all mushrooms are great for immunity because they survive in such harsh conditions. They kind of give you their immune strength when you ingest them. But agarikon is up there with some of the best immune support.
It's the ingredient that helps the molecule that helps it to be immune protective is called beta glucans.
Mm.
And I'm not trying to be sciencey here, but these mushrooms have some of the highest amount of beta glucans that exist within all the types of medicinal mushrooms. So it's right up there, as you said, Tamara. It's powerful. And when you talked about taking 5 instead of 1, what's interesting about these mushrooms is that even in high dosages, there's very little side effects that are known to mushrooms, even if you're taking them in high dosages. Worst case scenario, you might get a bit of indigestion because you took too many at the same time.
Mm.
But apart from that, there is no side effects to taking higher dosages of mushrooms. In fact, the higher you take at some point, the more protected your immune system.
Okay. So I guess this leans into talking about dosages and how to do them, because anyone who takes mushrooms, they will see that again, when it comes to tablets, take 1 tablet a day, or if they take it in their coffee, it's like have a coffee a day. So are mushrooms generally safe for everyone at low doses? First of all, like you can basically take them daily, right?
They're absolutely safe for everyone, at low dosages and in your coffees and your teas, as long as you're not allergic to mushrooms.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So basically, if you have a reaction after taking it, then maybe, yeah, just it could be
yes,
an allergy or something.
exactly. And what's even more interesting is that it might be that you're not actually allergic to mushrooms, but if you haven't taken organic mushrooms, you might just be allergic to whatever else is inside that mushroom. I'm going to go back to dosage, but I wanted to give you one concept, which is when mushrooms are interacting and growing in their environment, they're like sponges. They take in everything that they receive from nature, whether it's the nutrients from the trees, from the plants, from the soil, or whether it's toxins and pesticides that have been sprayed. These mushrooms are able to take in everything that's there. So it's very important when selecting the type of brand or mushrooms that you're taking to make sure that they're actually organic, because whatever they have inside them, they have all the good stuff, but if they're not organic, they're carrying all that bad, nasty stuff as well.
So when choosing supplements, you'd recommend organic, first of all. And we will come back to dosages, but this kind of leads me to a question that I had from a friend last week. She said, my mushrooms, they contain polysaccharides. And she's like, what is this about? And I looked it up and it said something about beta glucans. And so why does mushroom supplementation, why do they require polysaccharides to help them go down easier? What's the link there?
So polysaccharides, all it means is that it's a kind of specific molecule that's present in the mushroom. And the main polysaccharide present in mushrooms is the beta glucans I was talking about. But mushrooms contain fiber because, if you eat them, they have a lot of fiber in them. If they're grown in the sun, they might have a lot of vitamin D. They have a lot of other nutrients, high in protein, for example. But the main immune protecting element of the mushroom is these famous beta glucans inside them. So the higher the amount of beta glucans that have been extracted from the mushroom, the better it is for immune activity, immune protection.
So when choosing a good quality supplement, look for beta glucans on the back.
Exactly. Yeah. And they'll say polysaccharides, which becomes a bit vague because they're not telling you what kind of beta glucans are. If they're polysaccharides, they're just a term coined in science to explain these immune properties within them. But these supplement brands need to be a little bit more specific about, are they beta glucans or some kind of other stuff that you've mixed in there? So you have to be really careful with the labeling and just make sure that the higher the beta glucans inside that capsule, the more immune protection you'll receive.
Okay, well, that's good guidance for when to choose, like which supplements to choose when you're kind of shopping for them. So back to dosages. So low dosages are safe. So when is it okay to up the dose, and by how much are we talking?
So it's okay to up the dose when you actually have a chronic problem. So let's say just like yourself, at the moment, I think I've noticed that my nan has signs of Alzheimer's at the moment. So my plan is to give her some mushrooms and just experiment with that and see if it'll help. But I'm going to give her very high dosage lion's mane mushroom.
And what is that? What is a high dosage?
So when you're actually getting a mushroom, it's very important to understand that when you're using a mushroom in teas and coffees, what essentially people are doing is they're taking the full mushroom, including the root, and they're making a powder out of it, and you're drinking it into your coffee or your tea, or you're sprinkling it on your breakfast. But when you're looking at high dosage, you can't measure the amount of beta glucans just by taking it in a powder. So what a lot of companies are doing right now is they're able to extract only the beta glucan from the mushroom, removing and forgetting the fiber, the protein. All they're doing is extracting the beta glucans. And that is where dosage comes in. You need about more or less, and I'm just giving it in grams, but you need about 500 milligrams of beta glucans to be able to see have an impact if you have a major problem with your health.
So on average, with a capsule, how many capsules on average would that be?
On average, that would be, if someone is selling 250 milligram capsules, then it would be two capsules.
Two
as a minimum. Okay. If you're looking at the normal way people are selling in the brands, that would be a minimum of 2 to actually see an impact.
And is there a maximum amount of beta glucans?
There actually, interestingly, there isn't. It's at some point it reaches a plateau where people just keep taking more and more. But the recommended dosage for someone with a chronic problem would be actually the minimum might be 500, but if you want to speed things up, you're going to go up to a
Okay.
gram and a half.
So that's
So
a
you
1,000 to 1,500 milligrams.
exactly. And
Okay.
again, you're not just taking your amazing mushroom mix and putting it into your powder and saying, oh, that's my 500 milligrams. You're actually taking the beta glucans, the immune protecting or the brain protecting molecules inside the mushrooms.
So again, that is really important that you check the back of the label to actually see the dosage of beta
Absolutely.
glucans. Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Because if not, people are going to be like, oh, I've taken the mushrooms, I've seen no effect. Well, of course, you haven't seen an effect because you've taken a very low dose.
Mm-hmm. So high dosages daily. And you said that you'll start to see or feel effects within about 4 months. Is that the same for everyone, would you say?
No, no.
Okay.
This is for Alzheimer patients.
Right.
They start to see an effect after 4 months. That's what I've seen in my practice. But with other mushrooms, such as cordyceps, for example, I remember taking a cordyceps capsule once, and I made a very big mistake because I decided I would take it at about 6 in the evening.
Mm.
And I'm not joking, Tamara, but I was so hyper, so awake, so alive at 10 p.m. in the night because I'd taken a mushroom that was meant to give me a lot of energy.
That
And
is
I did not sleep that
insane.
night till 1 a.m., but I was so full of energy at 10 p.m., it felt like 10 a.m. for me.
Oh my God. And that was just with one tablet. Oh my gosh. So,
One high dose tablet. Yeah.
I mean, so there's different times really that you should be taking mushrooms. Can you take them any time of day, or do you have to take some in the morning, some in the evening?
Well, interestingly, aside from the cordyceps, all the other mushrooms, you can take it at any time.
Okay, but be
In
careful with
fact,
cordyceps.
yes. In fact, with reishi, it's even recommended to take it in the evening because since it helps you to feel zen and relaxed, you can actually take reishi in the evening just before going to sleep or after dinner, and it just helps you to feel more relaxed at night.
So, because obviously I have a mainly female audience and they are fairly interested in exercise, which mushrooms would you say support exercise? Do any of them give you, I mean, for example, with cordyceps, taking cordyceps before you exercise, would that be a good idea? Like, are there some that boost performance, physical performance?
They do. They do. Interestingly, the swimming team, the Italian swimming team, women's swimming team, had taken cordyceps for many, many years because it boosts their energy levels. So they were actually taking it, and it's legal to take these mushrooms as a way to enhance energy levels.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I need to go out and I need to buy some cordyceps right now. because if it does that for exercise and if the swimming team have been taking them, then there must be something in it for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I had that effect on the first day, but depending on a person's energy levels, they would see you do see a difference within a few days with cordyceps or with the other mushrooms. You start seeing it because you get sick less. You feel a bit more. You just don't get ill anymore. So that is, for example, with agaricus that you take, that's what you should be taking in the winter months just to
Mm.
protect yourself, for example.
And are there any mushrooms that are highly recommended for females, or is there no gender difference?
There's no gender difference. I mean,
Mm.
even with cordyceps, I told you that it helps with libido issues, but actually it helps with supporting testosterone levels both in men and in women. So it's interesting to take them. It doesn't mean it, with the mushrooms, it's never boosting anything or it's never suppressing anything. It's just balancing you. So if you have too much testosterone, it won't have an effect. If you don't have enough testosterone in your within you, then it'll help to boost it for you. So it's really working with your body. It's not boosting anything, it's not suppressing anything. It's truly modulating, balancing you, and looking at your body and saying, let me see where are the gaps, and it'll help it to support it in that way.
Do mushrooms fall under the category of adaptogens?
They do. They do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of interchangeable because the term adaptogen in itself is just referring to it helps you adapt to your daily stresses. So they fall under that category. They modulate, they regulate, and they help you adapt to your day. And that's all they really do. They just help to kind of bring that balance. But there are so many different types of ways to take these mushrooms. So I've been talking about capsules a lot because that's basically what I've got. I've got a load of capsules over there. I've got lion's mane, maitake, agarikon, and some other one, lion's mane. If I don't know if I mentioned that one actually.
Yes, you did.
So because that's my favorite
You
one.
need to
That's
take
why.
some of them also, because you need to take them.
I told you, brain fog. I told you.
Yeah.
But so capsules, you have just tablets, you have teas, you have tinctures, coffee powders. Are they all equally effective, or would you avoid some?
I wouldn't avoid any, to be honest. I wouldn't avoid any. But let's say if you're taking a little bit of mushroom in your coffee every day, there's nothing wrong with it, because it does help you a little bit to, um, if you're taking some reishi in your tea, it does help to calm you down a little bit. But again, if you're looking at a chronic problem, taking a little bit of, reishi tea is not going to do the job. You need to really look at having high dosages to actually have an effect. So there's no harm done, but the question is, you want to see the benefits, you want to see the results.
Because I thought with coffees and teas, I always thought if you add boiling water, surely that will disrupt the function. Is that true?
That's actually not true. Interestingly, when I talked about Tibetan monks making reishi tea, they would take the actual reishi and leave it there to boil for a long time, because some of the active ingredients, some of the molecules in these mushrooms would get released when you boil them. So contrary to vegetables and fruits that sometimes, if you're throwing away the water, you lose the properties. It's like making a soup. You're making sure all the nutrients are there inside your soup. And in the same way, mushrooms are releasing some of these elements. When you're taking them in capsule form, your body is anyways also working with it, to use these molecules in a better way. So either or, both work. It's just that capsules are for the higher dosage, but drinking reishi tea is actually very, very beneficial.
Okay, so it's a really nice part of a routine, like a daily routine. And then you would recommend like capsules and tablets for like high dosages. And where does tinctures fall into this? Are they just super powerful forms of mushrooms?
Tinctures are as powerful as the capsules.
Okay.
So some companies have tinctures, some companies have capsules. With the tinctures, what they've done is they've pre-boiled it for you, and they've made a concoction for you, just like old monks did, or herbalists used to do in their times. But the capsules are equally powerful. The interesting thing is, if you take the capsules with vitamin C, they have the same effect as the tinctures. So
okay.
it's actually just an easier way to ingest them if you don't like the taste of some of these mushrooms. Reishi can be very bitter, for example, and you might not necessarily want to have it on a daily basis. So it's just a way of taking them differently without thinking about them,
And you're right about the bitterness, because I have made a habit of opening the capsules and putting the powder into my smoothies and my juices. And I don't know which one it is. I put a whole range of them in, but I think it's the agarikon, it was so bitter and it just made the smoothie just taste awful. And I was just like, oh God, that is horrible. I don't know. It wasn't the lion's mane. I think it was one of the others. So the tinctures are just as powerful. And I have to say they taste awful. Right?
That is the main problem. So that's why taking them in capsules with a little bit of vitamin C is absolutely fine.
Okay. I am running a fasting program for females. So it's a 30-day fasting kind of protocol. So are mushrooms okay to take whilst you're fasting? Because I presume not.
If you're taking the mushrooms as a whole mushroom, as I said, if you're taking the fiber and all of that, then it's considered a food. But if you're purely just taking the beta glucans inside them that have been extracted, then there's barely anything else inside that capsule. So you could potentially take it at that point.
Okay, so they're okay to be taking whilst you're fasted. Okay. Um, I mean, so I think, we talked about the cooking mushrooms, and I presume that they don't really have, I mean, they have their own nutrients that they give to you, but they don't have the same therapeutic effects as therapeutic mushrooms. But I know that psychedelics, you said to me before that they're not really your area that you tend to discuss, or your expertise. But what do you think of this movement that's happening at the moment, where it's becoming so popular and people are almost pushing for it to become legal? Which I think it might even go that way at some point, because there's so much behind it now about how much research there is and how it can actually help with depression and PTSD. And what is your opinion on this movement that's happening?
I think it's a movement in the right direction, because I think that these mushrooms have existed in nature for a reason, and they have been able to help us in so many different ways. In the same way that medicinal mushrooms have medicinal properties, these psilocybins have specific properties that are helping people with all the issues that we're encountering today. So I have seen a lot of people become much happier, more balanced using the magic mushrooms in their, maybe not their daily lives, but when there's a crisis and they're taking these mushrooms, it's actually helping them to modulate their pain levels and help them fight depression and mental health issues. So I've seen a huge change. And they're actually available in woods and everywhere nowadays. Like, you could actually even find them if you went around in the woods. You could actually, if you knew how to forage mushrooms, you would know the difference between your daily mushrooms, the poisonous ones, the medicinal ones, and these magic ones. And if they are available in nature and they're absolutely safe to take at a certain dosage, then I'm very much for the movement. Absolutely for it.
I am amazed by psychedelics, because with the therapeutic mushrooms, they clearly are designed to work with our human biology. And then the psychedelics come in, and then it's like a whole different universe. It's, you take them, you eat them, and people have experiences, spiritual experiences, religious experiences. And it's just absolutely insane. It's like, how is this not magic? Like, how is there not magic out there in the world, when a simple mushroom can put you in touch with your spiritual side, and it can heal you? And I find it so fascinating. And do you know how they are different? Like, how do psychedelics have this effect on our brain?
I
Like,
think
what is the
they're
difference there? Like, just can't picture it.
I think it's just what you just said, Tamara. Like, the medicinal mushrooms are helping your body, they're helping you become more resilient physically. And I feel that the psychedelics are helping you to become more resilient mentally. And when you look at these species, again, I told you they're completely different species, but psychedelics usually grow anywhere in the grass, whereas medicinal mushrooms require some kind of substrate, as we call them, or some kind of something to grow on. For example, on trees or on logs, they need to grow on something to then start receiving those beta glucans. So even their way of growing is so different that surely there's another purpose to these mushrooms, and they have come into our lives for a reason.
Yeah.
And if the research proves to you that it's safe to take, then why shouldn't you be taking them?
Yeah. And if psychedelics, if they have that profound effect on someone, then how can the therapeutic side not be true, when the proof is there in the psychedelics? Like, they have such a powerful effect, and the research has shown that taking lion's mane, maitake, agarikon, reishi, how can this not be true, that they have these amazing effects towards our health? So I guess kind of what everyone would want to know then is, okay, so just say they wake up in the morning and you've got your average kind of lady. She's probably got kids, she's probably working, and she's got lots going on in her life, and she probably exercises a bit. And what would you recommend, and what should she take? Just your average lady.
I would definitely recommend the reishi
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost. Because as I said, it helps with aging, it helps with being calm. We live in a crazy world, there's no doubt. We all need a little bit of calm in our life, and the reishi will help with that. And reishi is actually a very good immune protector. So I'd recommend the reishi with absolutely no doubt. Um, if she is in her late 30s onwards, I would recommend the cordyceps as well, because as you know, with women, as we get older, our testosterone levels go down and we feel quite imbalanced, and obviously menopause kicks in and all of that. So if you're in your late 30s, you're into your 40s and then onwards, I'd recommend taking a little bit of cordyceps as well.
So they're your two main recommendations if you were to choose. Okay.
Yeah.
And so would you take them with food or without? Like, would they have it with their
I would take
breakfast
them
or?
without food. I would take them without food and with some, if you're taking it in capsule, with some vitamin C. But if you're taking in tincture, then you can just literally just drink it first thing in the morning. So take it just before breakfast or before lunch. Have your mushrooms, wait 10 minutes, and then you can eat whatever you want. You're essentially giving your digestion, your stomach, the ability to digest all the nutrients from the mushroom. Because remember, they are food at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Whether they're medicinal, whether they're psychedelics, or they're the common mushrooms that we see, everyday mushrooms, they're all inside the food kind of range. So you are eating something that is giving you nutrients. So in order not for you to clog up your system, you take the mushrooms first and then you have your breakfast or your meals.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, that sort of brings me to the end of my questions, but is there anything that we're missing here? Is there anything that you want to add that will add a lot of value to the people listening?
I think it's important for every single person to go research these mushrooms, to realize that these medicinal mushrooms are so powerful, Tamara, that they have shown to even reverse some cancers. So, we're talking about immune properties, but we didn't talk about cancer. And the Japanese were very smart because they have actually been able to create a cancer drug that contains one of these mushrooms. And so if that mushroom is so powerful, it means that it has pharmaceutical properties without the side effects of pharmaceutical properties. So anyone listening that's thinking about very big immune problems such as cancer or autoimmune problems, please do research mushrooms as an alternative to anything else you're doing. Please do look into the research behind these mushrooms.
Okay, because it sounds like they can help you with almost anything, any ailments that you have. There's a mushroom for it, which is good to
Exactly.
know. That's good to
Exactly.
know.
I had to create characters for my mushrooms to remember them initially.
I might have to get some tips
Yes.
after this. Um, but Romina, I mean, that was insane. Like everything that you said, and this conversation did not disappoint. I've got so much out of it, and I've even written down your tips for, because I don't take reishi or cordyceps, so I'm going to get on it, especially the
Yes.
cordyceps. Like I feel like I need to look into that a bit more.
You need
So
to.
I'm definitely going to get on that train. But
Definitely.
it was just such a delight to chat to you, and I just feel like everyone would have gotten so much out of this. And I'm definitely leaving feeling like I'm taking this mushroom game so much more seriously than I was before. So I thank you for that. And you've really kicked off my interest and my intrigue in this entire mushroom kingdom. So thank you so much for chatting with me. And we have to do this again sometime, because I feel like there's so much more that we can chat about.
Absolutely. And there's so much more about mushrooms that's yet to be known. And it's really a pleasure to be here and talk about them. But yes, they are fascinating. they are real and they are a great alternative to a lot of the drugs we see out there. So I really hope everybody is able to research this and, to adopt this as a lifestyle practice.
Okay, so
Thank you
where
for having me.
so to
Yes.
finish, where can everyone find you? Because I'm sure they're like, oh my God, she knows so much about the mushrooms. I need to know more about Romina. So where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on the Nutrition Collective website, which is nutritioncollective.co.uk. And anything you need, we actually do presentations on mushrooms as well. We do webinars. We talk about some of these key factors that are beneficial in using mushrooms for. So yes, more than happy. Look us up on Instagram, on Facebook, or just drop us an email at info@nutritioncollective.co.uk.
Fabulous. Everyone needs to do that ASAP. Anyway, Romina, thank you so much. And I look forward to doing this again.
Same here. Such a pleasure. Thank you again.